For 8 years, my own son warned me to stay away from the woman next door. He built a 10-foot fence to keep her out. I trusted him, until the day she died, and a lawyer handed me an envelope that made me realize the most dangerous person in this story was the one I trusted the most. The funeral was on a Tuesday. Rain soaking my coat, no flowers, no reception, just me standing at the grave of a woman I barely knew. Emma Carter, 35, survived by her son, Liam, age 8. 2 weeks earlier, my son David had pulled me aside. "Stay away from that woman, Dad. She's dangerous. She's been spreading lies about Sarah and me." I'd nodded. He was my son. I trusted him. As I turned to leave the cemetery, a woman in a dark coat stepped into my path. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Jennifer Wells, an attorney. Emma Carter left this for you." She handed me a damp envelope and disappeared between the graves before I could ask why. I didn't open it until I was alone in my kitchen, door locked, lights off. Inside was a 6-page letter, a stack of documents, and a sealed envelope marked DNA test results. Emma's handwriting filled the pages. 10 years ago, she'd fallen in love with my son at a marketing firm in Hartford. When she told him she was pregnant, he vanished and married Sarah 3 months later. But one drunken night, David showed up at her apartment and confessed something he'd never told another soul. A month before she got pregnant, he'd been driving drunk on Elm Street and hit a man walking home from work. The man didn't move. David panicked, drove away, and paid cash the next morning to have his car quietly repaired. Emma raised Liam alone for 8 years, then bought the house next door hoping David would someday acknowledge his son. Instead, David and Sarah built a 10-foot fence and buried her in lawsuits and threats. 2 years ago, Emma discovered Sarah's supposed pregnancy was a lie. She was never pregnant at all. And in her last weeks, Emma wrote, "I think they're going to hurt me. I think they're going to make it look like an accident. Please protect my son. He's your grandson." I tore open the sealed envelope. Paternity, 99.97%. Liam was David's son, my grandson. I sat in the dark for a long time, and I finally understood something I'd spent 68 years refusing to see. 8 years earlier, I'd found a hole rotted through the base of that fence, and on the other side, a crying toddler, alone in the grass. I'd slid a small wooden bird through the gap. His name was Liam. His mother, Emma, let me keep coming back. Over the years, I carved him animal after animal, taught him to hold a knife, read him bedtime stories through a hole in a fence built to keep us apart. She'd once asked me, trembling, "If something happens to me, will you look after him?" I hadn't pressed her. I should have. Now I knew why she'd been afraid. I picked up the phone and called Child Protective Services. Within hours, I had a supervised visit scheduled. Then I called David and told him to come to the house. He walked in already defensive. When I said Emma's name, his face went cold. She was dangerous, obsessed with us. I set the DNA results in front of him. He crumpled the page in his fist. She lied. I asked him plainly about Elm Street, 2015. He called me a traitor for believing a stranger over his own blood, and stormed out. I told him to get out of my house before he could say another word. That night I took my heart medication like always. The next morning, driving to meet Child Protective Services, my chest seized, my vision doubled, and the road disappeared. I woke in Hartford General. A doctor told me my medication had been swapped, 4 times the normal dose. If I'd taken another pill, I wouldn't have survived. David had been alone in my house 3 days earlier. Detective James Miller took my statement. The letter, the DNA test, Emma's diary, the forensic photos of the 2015 hit and run. "This isn't just tampering," he told me. "We're talking about an investigation going back 9 years. He opened a case that afternoon. Sarah called me at the hospital, cold and controlled, warning me I was making a mistake trusting some woman over family. I told her Liam was family. She hung up. Miller moved me to a hotel for safety and arranged my first visit with Liam. I bought him a wooden puzzle and carved him a robin, 5 words along the base. For my grandson, with love. He recognized me before I could even introduce myself. "Are you the man who gave me the wooden birds?" When I nodded, he broke down crying and told me, "Mama said you were the only one who really cared." Later, gently, A child psychologist had him draw what he remembered from the night before his mother died. He drew a woman with yellow hair kneeling by the car's front wheel. Detective Miller photographed it immediately. "We'll use this," he said. Miller later confirmed security footage placed David's car outside Emma's house the night before her accident, parked for 20 minutes. And Michael Rodriguez's widow, Maria, the man David killed in 2015, wanted to meet me. In a quiet coffee shop, I told her everything. The letter, the confession, the cash repair receipt dated the day after her husband died. 9 years of grief broke open in her at that table. Her oldest son had dropped out of college to support the family. Her daughter had attempted suicide twice. Her youngest never knew his father at all. "You're not him," she told me, gripping my hand. "But we're going to stop him. Together." That evening, a search warrant was executed on David and Sarah's house at dawn. Body cam footage showed them dragged out in handcuffs. Sarah's seized laptop held search history from the 2 weeks before Emma died. How to cut brake lines, undetectable ways to harm the elderly, life insurance payouts after accidental death. A receipt showed she'd withdrawn $15,000 in cash 2 days after Emma's death. In a suitcase under their bed, Miller found 2 passports and plane tickets to Mexico, departing in 4 days. And 6 fake pregnancy inserts in Sarah's dresser. Her entire pregnancy had been staged for over a year. David called me from jail, sobbing, insisting he knew nothing, that it was all Sarah. I asked him about 2015 instead. He had no answer. Bail was denied for both of them. The judge called them a flight risk. That night David called again, no longer pleading. "When I get out of here, you're going to regret this," he said, and hung up before I could respond. Then Miller called again, urgent. They'd found something in Sarah's car, a professional brake-cutting kit, a burner phone with 37 messages to a woman named Jessica Burke, a mechanic with a record for fraud. One message, dated the night before Emma died. "Cut the brake lines tonight. Make it look like an accident. 5,000 when it's done." Another, 2 weeks later. New target, the old man. Same method, another 5 grand. Sarah had paid to have me killed too, and there was an $800,000 life insurance policy on me, with David as beneficiary. 3 days later, driving to a meeting, my brakes failed completely on a downhill stretch. I wrenched the wheel into a median, rather than crash into other cars, and the impact flipped the vehicle. I woke in the hospital again, broken ribs, a fractured wrist, but alive. Jessica Burke had confessed to cutting both sets of brake lines for Sarah's money. Meanwhile, a woman named Rachel, Emma's estranged sister, a marketing director in San Francisco, reached out. She and Emma hadn't spoken in 10 years, not since Rachel had urged her to end the pregnancy. Now guilt-stricken, Rachel wanted custody of Liam, offering money, stability, a 2-parent home. I refused to back down. Emma had chosen me. It went to family court. At the hearing, Rachel's attorney argued my age and health made me an unreliable long-term guardian. My attorney countered that Emma's will named me explicitly, that I was the only person who had shown up for Liam every single week for 8 years. When the judge asked Liam directly who he wanted to live with, he answered without hesitation, "Grandpa, he's my family." Rachel withdrew her petition on the spot, asking only to be allowed to stay in Liam's life as his aunt. The judge granted me full custody. 4 weeks later, the trial began. Prosecutor Catherine Santos laid out the case. David's manslaughter and his cover-up, Sarah's calculated murder of Emma, and her attempts on my life. Detective Miller testified to the burner phone and the search history. Jessica Burke, testifying against her former employer, described exactly how she'd cut both brake lines for cash. A forensic specialist confirmed the cuts were deliberate, made with a tool found in Sarah's trunk. I took the stand and described 8 years of a relationship built through a hole in a fence, and the 3 attempts on my own life that followed the truth coming out. Maria testified about the family David shattered in 2015 and told him to his face that he deserved to rot. Liam, testifying by video with a psychologist beside him, calmly identified the woman he'd seen kneeling by his mother's car the night before she died. David took the stand in his own defense, sobbing, admitting the 2015 hit and run, but denying any role in Emma's death or the attempts on my life. Under cross-examination, Santos dismantled his claim of ignorance. He'd shared a computer with Sarah, watched her withdraw $15,000 in cash, known Emma had evidence against him, and done nothing. "You're not a coward," Santos told him. "You're an accomplice." Sarah never took the stand at all. Her attorney knew her coldness would finish her in front of the jury. The verdict came back guilty on every count for both of them. David, 50 years, parole eligible after 35. Sarah, life without parole, plus 55 additional years for conspiracy, running consecutively. She would never leave prison. At sentencing, Maria spoke first, then Rachel, then me. I told David that if he'd come to me in 2015 and told the truth, I would have stood by him and helped him make it right. But he'd chosen to lie, to run, to terrorize an innocent woman, and finally, to try to kill his own father. "I will never forgive you," I said, and sat down. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. "Justice has been served," I told them. "Now I'm going home to my grandson." The years that followed weren't easy, but they were good. I tore down the fence myself, with Maria's oldest son helping me carry the planks away. In its place, I built a wooden bench and carved into the backrest, where strangers became family. Liam started therapy, made friends at school, joined a woodworking club I started at the community center, and carved a small wooden heart for his mother's grave. Rachel and her husband moved to Connecticut to be close to us. 9 months later, she called crying. She was pregnant, and she and Marcus wanted to name their daughter Emma Rose. The charity fund we'd built from David and Sarah's seized assets had already helped 89 families affected by drunk driving and domestic violence. David wrote to me from prison, 12 letters, unopened, sitting in a drawer. Then came a call. He'd been assaulted by another inmate, a severe head injury, and as his only immediate family, I was asked to authorize emergency surgery. I stood over his hospital bed and told him plainly that I would sign the papers. Not for him, but for Liam, so his son would know his father was alive, even if he never saw him again. "But I will never forgive you," I said, and left without looking back. That night, I finally opened the letters. In the last one, David wrote that he thought every day about Michael Rodriguez, about Emma, about the son he'd failed to be brave enough to raise. He didn't ask for forgiveness, only that I tell Liam the truth, and tell him he deserved a better father than David had been. I showed Liam the letter. He wrote back himself. "I don't call you Dad. I don't know if I forgive you, but I don't hate you either. Mom taught me not to hate people. Maybe one day I'll visit, but not now." That evening, Liam and I stood by the fireplace with the rest of the unopened letters in my hands. "Are you sure?" I asked him. "The past is over, Grandpa," he said. "We move forward now." We burned them together. A year after the trial, Liam won first place in a school woodcarving competition, with a robin he'd carved himself, wings outstretched. Standing on that stage, he told the whole gymnasium, "My grandpa taught me that things that are broken can still be made beautiful again." We visited Emma's grave with the ribbon and a bouquet of her favorite white flowers, and Liam sang to her, voice shaking, the same song she used to sing to him. Looking back, my greatest failure was never trusting my son too much. It was staying silent when I already knew something was wrong, ignoring Emma's fear, dismissing the evidence in front of me, choosing comfort over courage. If you see someone suffering, speak up. If something feels wrong, look closer. If a child needs protecting, act, even when it costs you everything. That evening, as the sun went down over the garden where the fence used to stand, Liam leaned against me on the bench I'd carved for the two of us. "Grandpa, are we going to be okay?" I wrapped my arm around him and told him the truth. "We already are, buddy." Justice, I'd learned, was never only something handed down in a courtroom. It was here, in a boy's laughter, in a family stitched back together out of broken pieces, in a love that darkness never managed to reach.